Alien here. Robin Hood. Robin Hood. Robin Hood steals from the rich, gives to the poor. The rebel fighting tyranny alongside his band of merry men on behalf of the oppressed masses. The quintessential tale for the little guy, or elite-driven narrative.
Bastard.
Join me as we dig in, exploring these and many other Robin Hood-related concepts.
Shall we take a peek at ourselves?
As promised, turning now to your 20th and 21st century adaptations of Robin Hood to cinema, television, and gaming, we find the same elite messaging as uncovered in the first installment, with, to cite one example, the different media's romantic depictions of King Richard, or, as we may yet find out, even through criticisms of that same monarchical figure. Skipping the ever-depressing silent era of cinema, we can begin with the adventures of Robin Hood from 1938 and its classic setup. King Richard, a Norman, has been taken captive by Leopold V, Duke of Austria, on his return from the Third Crusade. In Richard's absence, his brother, Prince John, also a Norman, names himself as regent and increases taxes and regulations on the Saxons under the pretense of gathering ransom for Richard.
We take your safety seriously, and we take it personally.
Backing up their words, San Jose police made 6
On a historical note, this common depiction of ethnic conflict between Saxons and Normans is believed to originate from a 19th century French source, Augustin Thierry, a historian, only later followed by an Englishman, John Matthew Gutch, with his introduction to the 1847 version of The Little Gist of Robin Hood. Moving on with the plot in question, it is Sir Robin of Locksley, a Saxon noble who confronts Prince John in dramatic fashion, nonetheless, in protest of the treatment of Saxons. Robin labeling John a traitor for declaring himself regent in King Richard's absence.
I am regent of England.
John orders Robin's execution, but Robin escapes to Sherwood Forest with his loyal servants. In response, Prince John seizes Robin's lands and names him an outlaw.
Possessions are forfeit to the crown.
Notably, this departure from the earliest known ballads, elevating Robin to the status of nobleman, was first suggested by Richard Grafton in his Chronicle at Large from 1569, and was adapted and popularized by Anthony Munday with his 2 plays, Downfall of Robert Earl of Huntington and The Death of Robert Earl of Huntington, both dated to 1601. Thus it can be seen how much of the tale as it is known today, its classic form, was already in development by the 16th and 17th centuries. And a key part of that tale is how it depicts not just tyranny, but the solution to that tyranny from the perspective of the gentry, with Robin leading the peasants in support of the rightful king, somehow simultaneously in a fight for a free England.
Then kneel and swear this oath. But you, the free men of this forest, swear to despoil the rich, only to give to the poor, to shelter the old and the helpless, to protect all women, rich or poor, Norman or Saxon. Swear to fight for a free England, to protect her loyally until the return of our king and sovereign, Richard the Lionheart.
Be quiet! I order you to be quiet!
Order? Who does he think he is?
I'm your king.
Well, I didn't vote for you.
You don't vote for kings.
Here we see the same trap that cost the peasants their revolt of 1381. Loyalty to the monarch. Support of the same system that can, at a moment's notice, break down into absolute tyranny.
That is why I'm your king.
Ah, now I remember.
Upon the return of Richard the Lionheart, Robin does criticize his true king in this version, condemning him even somewhat for his involvement in the Crusades, but only because it deprived England of his presence, and as such, law and order.
What, you condemn holy crusades?
Aye, I'll condemn anything that leaves the task of holding England for Richard to outlaws like me.
2 world wars tore the heart out of the 20th century.
The post-World War I, pre-World War II context here may also deserve some thought, as The Adventures of Robin Hood was primarily an American film which saw its theatrical release only 2 years prior to Your American Savior of Saviors campaign promises to keep your American boys out of any foreign wars.
I have said this before, but I shall say it again and again and again. Your boys are not going to be sent into any foreign war.
What about you, Robin?
But what ultimately happens when King Richard retakes his crown?
My sword is yours, sire, now and always.
But, is there nothing for yourself?
He gives Robin an earldom
else, sir.
and a wife of high status,
And,
while
you
keeping the
too
serfs
wish-
under the bondage of slavery and the peasantry under the power of the feudal system.
Trick of the outlaws! Kill him! Seize him!
In terms of entertainment, The Adventures of Robin Hood is a classy rendition of a deeply flawed tale of heroism. Earl Flynn provides one of the better performances of its protagonist, presenting a strong Robin with genuine courage, even though the character proves to be a rather weak champion of the poor and oppressed, cashing in on all his efforts to fight for a free England once the individual he holds faith in is put back in his position of power over the entire country.
May I obey all your commands with equal pleasure, sire?
While many other theatrical versions of the classic Robin Hood tale were released throughout your 1940s, 50s, and 60s, it is the British television series of the same name as the Errol Flynn film, The Adventures of Robin Hood, which aired from 1955 through 1960, that perhaps sticks out the most.
My home and my land.
In this portrayal, we see the same disenfranchised Robin of Locksley become the outlaw Robin Hood,
name? Robin of...
supposedly in order to protect England, alongside his merry men from the evil machinations of Prince John, while the rightful ruler of the land, King Richard, is away fighting the Crusades. However, despite what it might seem on its surface, this is not exactly the same status quo Robin Hood. The series was produced by Hannah Weinstein, a member of the Communist Party of the United States of America, a woman who fled the U.S. to avoid the rise of anti-communist sentiment.
I have never been affiliated with or associated with the Communist Party.
All you have to do is sign it.
Weinstein even used the show as a means of providing work for writers such as Ring Lardner Jr. and Ian McClellan Hunter, who were blacklisted by the House Committee on Un-American Activities. Well, after the show had ended, Lardner even openly admitted that his writing was intended as a critique of the American ideals of the Eisenhower era.
Eisenhower had planned here.
And just where does all the communist or progressive subversion begin?
Unbelievable. And I know what I'm talking about, because I marched on the Holy Land myself, you know.
My father told me. He said you led a brigade of women soldiers.
That was many years ago. I was Queen of France then. It was my second marriage made me Queen of England.
How did the women's brigade work out?
Oh, it was a disaster. The women were fine, but the men weren't ready for the idea.
The women can try this too. That's something the Normans won't expect.
Women.
And why not? Do you think we women can't fend for ourselves, little John?
Here we see some of the roots of today's political messaging in your Western world. All that needs to happen for men and women to become interchangeable, or rather that is, for women to take the place of men, even on the battlefield, in hand-to-hand combat, no less, is simply for men to be ready for that change. But of course, women are simultaneously encouraged to use their sex to get what they want.
No, that's enough. That's quite enough.
I've come through so many dangers in my life, you know that.
Aye, Your Majesty, that I do.
And I would never have survived so long if I'd met every situation the same way. Sometimes I've had to make use of force, sometimes of my sex.
I bought myself a cloth of Lincoln Green.
What is perhaps most insidious about such messaging is that this entire series was originally aimed at children. And thus, perhaps, all the subversion about nonconformative sex behavior in the series can be seen as a precursor to the Roy G. Biv propaganda leveled at children today. Just take all the cross-dressing.
Oh, I forgot to tell you. I have an active imagination, too.
Are these your brother Albert's clothes you've got out again?
It is the same girl. The way I remember you all these years. Even the boys' clothes you like to wear.
Let the women bring the produce into the town. Close the gates to every man.
Don't slouch, Will. Keep your shoulders back. And you, Robin, don't take such big strides.
And naturally, this cross-dressing goes hand in hand with subversion, not just of sex behaviors, but of biological sex roles.
Are you insane? I'm Hubert the Mercer. You've met me a dozen times.
Mummy!
I'm an honest merchant.
Mummy!
All this, mind you, while simultaneously putting the man in his place.
After him! Well, can't a man have a little fun? Ow!
Beyond sex differences, there is the obvious sexual messaging, with the series exploring such topics as exploitation.
You don't often see a log as big as that.
How could he carry it?
Who? Take off your tunic. Don't you hear me, you oaf? Take it off. Take it off this instant! Isn't that splendid? Look at the size of the neck and those shoulders.
Then there is the fetish encouragement.
Feel the leather, is it not soft?
Yes, it is indeed. Excellent. Let me feel. Feel? Of course, my lord. Tell me, Master Higgs, what do you think of that? Now just feel this leather. Humphrey?
Remarkable.
Soft as velvet.
Be quiet, you rogue. I'll have you whipped. You must watch that temper of yours. I shall have to teach you a lesson.
I shouldn't mind being taught a lesson by you, Captain.
You must tie her down on a bed and spank her.
The series even features Marion in a pseudo-dominatrix style role and even flips that role on its head.
Yes, you must give us all a good spanking.
The years have given you a taste for strange pleasures.
Quickly, Robin, tie me up and bind me.
Keeping in mind the target audience, this series even sexualizes children.
Well, there's a good strong lad for you. I bet you've got some good muscles. Not bad.
Fate of a young boy of 14 is no triviality. I suggest that you have him brought here immediately and that you lend him a horse so that he can return with me.
Angus, you too, Lady Marion. Very enviable young Henry is to have merited such interest.
Count Walden.
But even with the constant push for degeneracy and breaking down of societal norms, the series' writers managed to find a line they would not cross.
As respectable a knight as one could wish for. Yes, but, well, he's not very gay. Respectable people are rarely gay.
I guess even communists can be homophobic.
Do you remember I said I thought I might find him interesting romantically?
Looking beyond the series' progressive messaging.
How old are you?
Young enough.
Richard Green offers audiences, at least on the surface, a balance between maturity and playfulness.
I saw the sheriff's man outside not half an hour ago.
That is true, but I have opened up an old secret passage you can all leave unseen.
Would you have us sneak out through some subterranean burrow like rabbits?
Even the swashbuckling nature of the various plots, a staple of any good Robin Hood media during this part of your 20th century, becomes a point of humor.
Enough! I've had enough!
Then again, unlike Basil Rathbone, who portrayed Sir Guy of Gisborne in the 1938 film version of the tale,
And how does your highness suggest that he be taken?
not everyone is a former British Army fencing champion.
You're supposed to protect honest people like me from Rose?
The TV series also features one of the better portrayals of the sheriff by Alan Wheatley, in obvious inspiration with his stylized, studded leather armor for later reprisals.
I want to see every last one of you swinging from Nottingham gallows.
By what right do you keep me prisoner?
You misunderstand my intentions. You've been brought here for your own protection.
In the end, though, even with all its communist progressivism, even with its push for degeneracy, this series still manages to reinforce the age-old power structures, teaching even conformity to elite systems.
Oh, it isn't easy to be a mason. A mason must be able to work with all different kinds of stone, be able to design buildings and draw up plans. An apprentice must be faithful to the church, the state, and the master under whom he works. He must be honest and truthful, and faithful in the secrets of the craft, the signs and symbols that only masons know.
Yes, plans. Plans and secret signs and symbols. Wink, wink.
Also, I'll make you a speculative mason.
Robin, a mason? It doesn't get more elite than that.
First, put your foot to mine, your knee to mine, your hand to mine, your hand upon my back. There's marrow in these bones.
You pay me or I'll report you to the Masons, and you know what that means.
Jumping forward to the 1970s and skipping some of those silliest bits from the 1960s, however nostalgic for some foolhardy Canadians, the progressivism of the likes of the Adventures of Robin Hood TV series became commonplace,
Halt in the name of Robin Hood!
with even the likes of Disney's cartoon version presenting the same story of an outlaw who supports his rightful king while also subjecting its intended audience, children, to the new typical sexual perversion. However, the 1970s did feature some unique developments when it came to the classic tale, such as the appearance of the first Robin Hood comedy, outside perhaps The Court Jester from 1955. While The Court Jester does deserve a nod, it served as more of an indirect parody of Robin Hood, with Danny Kaye starring as the carnival entertainer and seemingly incompetent member of the band of outlaws led by the Black Fox. Many of the Robin Hood elements are there, but Kaye's character is still no Robin Hood.
Would you like to try the other side, sire? Thank you, sire. Yea, verily, yea. Yea?
I've got it. The pellet with the poisons in the vessel with the pestle, the chalice from the palace has the brew that is true, right?
Right, but there's been a change. They broke the chalice from the palace.
They broke the chalice from the palace?
And replaced it with a flagon.
A flagon?
With a figure of a dragon.
A flagon with a dragon.
Right.
Now it is with a fealty, loyalty, moisten his lips with a vigorous wine. Yea, verily, yea. Now I think pleasure is fealty, loyalty, courage, and vigor, and valor, strength. Yea.
An attack upon the peasants is an attack upon us.
When Things Were Rotten, created in part by Mel Brooks,
I'm on your side, remember?
was a short-lived TV series and an obvious prelude to Robin Hood Men in Tights, which appeared 2 decades later.
It's a little tight.
That's the idea.
You might call me a real cut-up. How violently amusing.
Like the Disney version of Robin Hood, When Things Were Rotten also features cross-dressing and sexual degeneracy.
Oh, that would be simply wonderful. Handsome.
Again, we see the same woman power and other such progressive social commentary.
Very good, Marion.
What's the password?
Robin loves Marion.
Ah, mon chéri.
Aha! What are you doing with my wife?
The truth is
So you're getting married, my lord? He is not.
Thus you can see the clear move from progressivism in Robin Hood as Subversion, with the likes of The Adventures of Robin Hood, to progressivism as status quo.
You must marry me, you must.
John McCain, again, would do what he thought was the right thing, no matter what the pressure.
Perhaps this also reveals the now decades-long development of the Republican in name only.
That President Trump is practically and morally responsible.
Or rather, more precisely, the rise in a conservatism defined entirely by progressivism.
You will recall the Wyoming lawmaker was one of 10 Republicans who voted to impeach Mr. Trump for incitement of insurrection.
To the jail! Rhinos, halt! Stop! Desist!
Perhaps the more important evolution in the Robin Hood tale in the 1970s took place with Robin and Marian, or what would rather be more aptly titled The Depressing End of Robin and Marian. Set 20 years after the events of the typical classic tale, we see the inevitable conclusion of what might happen to Robin when he gives up his rebellious lifestyle and subjugates himself to the true king.
You peasant bastard.
We see the supposedly goodly monarch turn into terrible tyrant.
Still King of England!
While the film is an overall bore, The opening is rather brilliant in its quickness to this point.
Now!
Fighting in France, King Richard orders Robin to take control of a castle rumored to store a gold statue. Discovering that it is defended by a solitary, one-eyed old man who is sheltering women and children, and told that the statue is mere stone, Robin refuses to follow his king's orders.
I was with him when we found the thing. What we dug up was a rock. A gold statue, 3 foot long. I want it.
Captain?
Yes, my lord.
I ordered you to take this castle.
Yes, my lord.
Well, take it. Bring it down and get my statue.
They surrender, and your statue is a rock.
I command you.
You do it! You're a bloody bastard, you'll enjoy it!
Damn right I'll do it!
Richard, angered by the insubordination, orders the arrest of Robin and his companion, Little John, and the castle attacked. He is instantly wounded by the one-eyed old man, wielding a solitary arrow and no bow. Richard, in turn, massacres the helpless residents of the castle, all but the same one-eyed old man that wounded him.
So it was a stone.
A particular historical note here is the fact that King Richard was indeed wounded in the neck by an arrow while attacking a French castle on his return to England. Indeed, he is said to have freed the man who was responsible for his death. But the incident is highly fictionalized, and not just here in Robin and Marian, but in other later versions of the tale as well. Nevertheless, we get a Robin Hood tale with Robin and Marian that is finally critical of the rightful monarch.
I know it's you.
A King Richard who believes his authority is beyond question, even after killing innocent women and children.
But Robin judges me.
A ruler even further, with many a current-day comparison.
Judge a king!
And before any strike is taken, there must be near certainty that no civilians will be killed or injured.
And President Trump authorized a drone strike on a top Iranian general that the U.S. has labeled a terrorist.
President Trump giving a bold warning to Iran, saying if the nation retaliates, the U.S. is ready to strike Iranian targets fast and hard.
The architecture, the legal architecture around the use of drone strikes or other kinetic strikes wasn't as precise as it should have been, and there's no doubt that civilians were killed that shouldn't have been.
Trump has told the Iranians, you cannot disrupt navigation of the seas, you can't attack our interests or our allies. That's an unacceptable way to live in the 21st century.
Our coalition will stay until our work is done.
In short, if President Milosevic will not make peace, we will limit his ability to make war.
And no one in the whole world doubts us anymore.
What will you do without me now, Jolly Robin?
But this final criticism of the king can certainly be understood in the political context of the film's own time, with its rendition of the legend coming as it does right after the end of the Vietnam War. At the same time, however, the Robin of Robin and Marian is no heroic figure either. It becomes clear upon his return to England that everything Robin fought against in his youth, all the tyranny and oppression of the peasantry, simply continued unhindered while he was off fighting in the Crusades with his king. And Robin does not respond to the ongoing injustice, but gets lost instead on a selfish quest to relive his past, even taking up those same coercive methods he once fought against in order to do so.
I'm gonna have to split you from here to there.
Dragging along with him the peasantry and those loyal to him.
Bro, horseman.
Wait there.
It's my life, Robin.
You're a fool.
In King John's name, I charge you. Yield.
I'm trying to.
Give her to me!
Here.
In short, while finally critical of the rule of an individual, absolute sovereign, the protagonist of Robin and Marian becomes so misguided and so harmful to those around him as to make his story of rebellion utterly meaningless. Lacking any further substantial political commentary beyond its opening scenes condemning King Richard, it is thus a perfect narrative to pitch to the masses for any incoming elite regime that might want to disavow the atrocities associated with the likes of a Vietnam War, or simultaneously claim disapproval of those who supported such a conflict.
Progress is not foreordained. The key is freedom.
Whatever the case may be, it is not until the mid-1980s that we get a Robin Hood not just willing to condemn the king, but willing to organize directly against the ruling elite. Robin of Sherwood, 1984 through 1986. Again, with Robin of Sherwood, we see the same elements of the classic tale. Robin Hood steals from the rich, gives to the poor. Robin and his merry band hiding in Sherwood Forest and fighting on behalf of the oppressed against their tyrannical oppressors, Prince John, the Sheriff of Nottingham, his right-hand man, Sir Guy of Gisborne, and the corrupt clergy. But Robin is not just a disenfranchised elite. His father was a nobleman, killed by the Sheriff of Nottingham for the ancient magic relic he guarded. Robin does not just become Robin Hood of Sherwood Forest, but is appointed Hern's son, or the Hooded Man, the mystical champion of the serfs and peasantry, by the forest deity Hern the Hunter.
Take the sword.
In English folklore, Hern the Hunter is a completely separate figure from the mythical Robin Hood, with the first known extant reference to the ghost, pagan deity, or ancient archetype is in William Shakespeare's 1597 play, The Merry Wives of Windsor. Although he is not connected to any of the localities of the original ballads or later early tales, he is, like Robin Hood, associated with one of the forests of England, Windsor Forest in Berkshire. Nevertheless, the added pagan mysticism is not entirely unsuitable to the literary tradition of the Robin Hood tale. The Robin Hood plays of the 16th and surrounding centuries were often associated with the May Games, performed during Pentecost and Whitsuntide, and the Morris dances, which had pre-Christian origins in the fertility rites of the agricultural people of Europe. It is likely that the addition of Maid Marian and Friar Tuck as principal characters in the Robin Hood tale, characters who are notably absent from the earliest ballads, can be attributed to these festivities. But beyond its mysticism, perhaps what makes the Robin Hood of Robin of Sherwood so unique is his ultimate rejection of the true king, King Richard.
You heard His Majesty! You said it pleased your majesty that I wasn't afraid to speak honestly.
He is the first Robin who does not ultimately turn his back on the oppressed, avoiding all the problems associated with the inevitable reality that King Richard will die
So now you rebuke your king.
and be succeeded by that same Prince John that has treated the people so terribly.
He's laughing at you. They all are. What does he care about England? How long's he ever spent there? A few months and he's off again, isn't he? When he's drained the country of money?
You
You were a serf. He gave you your freedom.
Oh, yes, to die for him in Normandy.
Well, he could have died in Sherwood.
Then I'll choose Sherwood.
But Robin still subjects himself to a higher authority, Herne the Hunter.
There, lass. Be all right.
And Herne ultimately fails to protect his loyal servant, and even the people of Sherwood who worship him, sacrificing his first son in the end for little reason, only to appoint a second. Although they both supposedly support the ideals of freedom and justice, we get a succession of Robin Hoods who subject their mission to the whims of a higher authority.
You came as you were bidden.
However mystical he might be, ironically, a very earthly authority at that.
Quickly! Take cover! Come on!
Unlike many other versions of the Robin Hood tales, Robin of Sherwood proves difficult to read in the political context of its time. While the Western world of the 1980s saw an escalation of the Cold War, it also experienced a relative break from direct armed conflict. Other regions of the world, meanwhile, saw complete chaos, with the likes of the Iran-Iraq War ripping apart the Middle East.
Hundreds of thousands to their deaths in human wave assaults.
The aggressive designs of squalid dictators, large and small, were seen everywhere.
Both the US and the UK also saw a relative push against their strong centralized governments, with the rise of popular figures such as Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, who, taken together, advocated for the likes of tax reduction, economic deregulation, reduction in government spending, privatization of state-owned companies, and reduction of the power and influence of trade unions.
But what the honourable member is saying is that he would rather the poor were poorer, provided the rich were less rich.
It does not seem mere irony, given this framework, that in a time of relative freedom from government oversight, orchestrated by the leaders of those same governments, that you finally get a Robin Hood figure who openly stands against the system of governance of his own time.
He could cause trouble, dear Renaud.
He could, my liege, and will.
Here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
Perhaps it is only coincidental that once you see a swing back to greater totalitarianism and higher taxes, a political context, mind you, all accompanied by a return to dynastic rule and armed conflict, that you also get a return to the classic Robin Hood tale in which its protagonist fights against tyranny, but only in the name of the true king. Then again, perhaps some of the elements of Robin of Sherwood, such as its pagan mysticism, provide a direct counter to the elite politics of its own time,
moral majority is
such as the rise in a Christian conservatism that has since supported so many of your strong-handed political leaders, especially in the U.S.
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
Whatever the case may be, the TV series is arguably the most enjoyable iteration of the tale from modern times, providing, as it does, most notably, one of the most delightful group casts to portray Robin, his merry band, and his sword enemies.
I find you totally repulsive.
The lady will save your lives if you will serve the Lord Lucifer.
Huh? And become one of your hounds? Tell her she can go to hell!
She expects to.
Robin of Sherwood provides a near-perfect balance between realism, comedy, romanticism, and magic elements, with a beautiful but simplistic 80s soundtrack underscoring its every moment.
We all have.
The series also introduced major elements and character types embraced by later adaptations of the tale, such as the witchcraft, which featured in popular versions in the later 1990s.
What do you see?
The son of a dead man.
Loxley. Does he affect us?
Little sod could be trouble.
Are you certain?
Certain? You want certain? Hire yourself a witch. I'm just your cook. Here, eat this.
It also began the trend of including either a mentally deficient member and/or black member of Robin Hood's merry band of men. The first, of course, originating with Robin's half-brother, Much. And the second, originating from the Saracen, Nazir. Although Nazir is not dark-skinned, his appearance led to the inspiration of many other future Muslim or Moorish characters, some of whom would be black.
No rules. You traveled 10,000 miles to save my life, then leave me to be butchered?
I fulfill my vows when I choose.
Which does not include prayer times or meal times or any time I'm outnumbered 6 to 1.
You whine like a mule. You are still alive.
Both character types were included in Maid Marian and Her Merry Men, created by Tony Robinson.
I know what's going on.
Which began in 1989. In addition to the appearance of Barrington, a Rastafarian rapper, a parody of Nazir, the series also saw the appearance of Rabies, a complete incompetent idiot who fails even to reach a fraction of the intelligence of Much from Robin of Sherwood.
What? Quiet, dog! Would you mock our beloved sovereign? Excuse
Maid Marian and Her Merry Men is also perhaps the first fully feminist version of the Robin Hood tale, as opposed to fully communist, as was the Adventures of Robin Hood series. With Maid Marian taking on the leadership role typically given to Robin, and Robin being depicted as a complete coward.
Okay. It's alive! It's attacking me! Take it away! I want to go home.
As is suitable for a feminist tale, Maid Marian not only fits squarely into the quintessential bossy woman stereotype, but is also proved to be less a woman of action and more a woman of complaint, showing far fewer qualities of strength than the Maid Marians that came before her.
Do these fantastically brave deeds with a merry smile on our face, and everyone will say, "Good heavens, it's those merry men! Come in and have a cup of tea. Can we have your autograph?" And no one will dare stand against us. And our names will go down in history, and we'll be famous forever, and people will name pubs after us. And I solemnly swear...
But as leader, her men are, out of necessity, depicted by comparison as either physically, mentally, or morally weaker.
So, you're selling foul, stinking, rotten, mouldy goods to innocent little old ladies, aren't you, son?
We can't just sit down and talk about it.
No.
Or even smaller.
Are you alright?
Finally, Your Royal Highness, this one. Bullying, shouting, swearing, kicking kittens and stealing children's sweets.
Well done, Corporal.
In terms of any true revolt against a tyrannical elite,
I'm making you sergeant.
obviously such rebels would not stand a chance against its strongest, most totalitarian institutions.
So, the cross little girly-whirly wants to fight, does she? Well, that's all right by me.
We'll really have our own costumes.
Yep.
Then again, this seems to be by design.
Who's going to design them?
You?
Right, you're on.
And this is how the band got together.
In sum, Maid Marian and her merry men closed off the 1980s and introduced the 1990s, where we will begin next time with a Robin Hood tale that falls directly in line with its more progressive traditions.
I'm really looking forward to getting out into the desert and working alongside the American Marines.